Nature and culture is a bit like watching a dance, a fragile interplay that shapes the fabric of our human existence. In this video, we unravel the paradoxical relationship where culture, a product of human ingenuity and creativity, draws inspiration and resources from the boundless beauty of nature. Yet, as we delve deeper, we confront the stark reality that our cultural pursuits often tip the scales of balance, challenging the very ecosystems that nurture us. Navigating the complex terrain of this age-old dichotomy, this video seeks to understand how the intricate tapestry of culture weaves itself into the vast canvas of nature, sometimes harmoniously and at other times disruptively out of sync. We'll be exploring case studies of both instances throughout the video. The battle between nature and culture has been a long one. Some say it began during colonial endeavours. As Nigel Clarke suggests in Feral Ecologies, colonisation was as much a biological process as it was an economic, cultural or political one. Biological forces stand out as the most eruptive and unpredictable, and the least amenable to recontainment. In a stroke of irony, during the colonisation movement of Australia, the British Empire aimed to, quote, carry with them everything of England but the soil and the climate, unquote. While they eventually caused havoc on the Australian environment due to the invasive species they carried, both unintentionally and as part of bringing English culture to the nation. Historian Alfred Crosby provides an insight into the impact the colonists had. The complete lack of co-adaptation between local vegetation and the hoofed livestock introduced from the north played such havoc with the topsoil that some observers feared a complete collapse of the biophysical infrastructure. Changes in the practice and organisation of farming happened in the 17th century throughout Europe, and Britain became a part of this agrarian revolution. Colonialism, Manuel de Landa theorises, may have been the start of, quote, disciplining and homogenisation of organic life.
Meanwhile,
it was around the same time that back in England, while the spreading of English culture was happening, wealthy upper-class men were embarking on the grand tour to various European countries in order to learn about the culture of others through art, history, architecture, and in some cases, nature documentation. This tour encouraged men to hunt exotic animals and take them home as a souvenir, their culture of asserting masculine dominance over nature, disrupting the ecosystem that they will then leave behind. They also completely savagised the indigenous cultures in their travel writings that already existed in harmony with the land before their arrival. Fast forward a couple of centuries and the general consumption of things is at an all-time high.
You've seen it advertised on television and in your favourite magazines.
Capitalism has a firm foothold in many countries across the world, with the US particularly doubling down on the American dream that capitalism provides.
When he looked over a Mustang hardtop at his Ford dealers, he discovered some pretty unexpected features inside.
The 1950s post-war economy led to a massive boom in consumerism, with people feeling more comfortable to extend their identities into things like cars, homes, clothes, and electronics.
Come alive, come alive, you're in the Pepsi generation.
However, with the decades of that excess piling up, it will inevitably lead to waste. The film WALL-E portrays a dismal potential future of being surrounded by waste, so much so that humans can no longer survive on this planet.
And do not return to Earth. Repeat, do not return to Earth. Let's get the heck out of here.
He finds things that once meant the world to humans, like an engagement ring, and tosses them aside. However, when he finds a small plant, something that we would disregard even today, he cares for it with his whole being. The movie demonstrates that even in the most dire circumstances, nature can always find a way to thrive against a damaging culture. As Herbert Guthrie Smith puts it, top hats, violins, ground resin, old catgut, long hair and broken piano wire would doubtless produce their specialised flora. Wastery, a bestiary of waste, dives into the multifaceted world of waste in the current era. However, one particular piece, Bomb Villages by Liazani, addresses how various areas in Laos had been using military waste and undetonated bombs to build villages and homes, while canoes are made of fuel tanks. The bombs become part of artisan culture, with planters, cutlery, and even bells being made from them. The culture of these villages was forever altered as a result of this waste, with much of the environment being unusable for agriculture, as it still contains many of these undetonated bombs underground. Around 20,000 people have been killed or injured by cluster bombs or other unexploded items in Laos since the war ended. Despite the hazardous environment that now presents itself in Laos, people have adapted. As Leah Zani writes, a half-century after the US airstrikes, ongoing military wasting provokes new ways of living that are not dependent on military plans or subservient to geopolitical claims. A Geology of Media by Jussi Parikka speaks on the cultural history that even dust can carry, on a molecular level. Dust can highlight the world of non-human transactions that can facilitate, track, record, and govern human affairs. This can be quite harmful at times, especially when it comes to the use of PFOAs by DuPont. This is a chemical that does not break down, and as a result of the company using it in everything from toys to frying pans, it now lives in 99% of all living things on the planet.
Some people use a little oil or butter when they cook so that things don't stick to the pan. But I use polytetrafluoroethylene.
Additionally, the insecticide DDT was banned in the US in 1972, and to this day is still found in our body's fat stores due to how interlinked we all are with the earth, the animals, and the particles that surround us.
Not just a little. Its DDT content is even higher than government specification.
Ironically, DuPont published a paper titled Clean Air and Water in a Complex Society in 1965, when in reality they, quote, dumped, poured and released at least 1.7 million pounds of PFOAs into public waters between 1951 and 2003. In 2001, lawyer Robert Billett took them to court on multiple occasions for plaintiffs with serious, sometimes fatal, medical conditions as a result of consuming the water. In their prime, DuPont had used their brand to sell a lifestyle, an American culture of innovation and cleanliness that resonated with their Cold War era audience that valued American culture more than ever. That culture relied on a chemical that was never going to be compatible with the earth, and in its wake, actively destroyed it. So what happens when humans can't successfully meld their culture with their surrounding environment? In short, the earth is no longer compatible with humans, and culture theoretically falls to ruin. In another chapter of Wastery, titled Architecture of Ruins, author Jonathan Hill dives into what ruination actually means and represents in terms of culture. The etymology of ruin derives from the Latin word monere, meaning to remind, warn, or advise. He states, the ruin is a temporal metaphor representing potential as well as loss, and also an environmental model combining nature and culture. A ruined place or society shows not only what once was, but what could have been if a different path had been taken. Adam Shivara, author of the chapter titled Rubble, feels that not enough attention is given to the ruined state of something. Deemed detritus, rubble is too easily assigned the role of historical leftover, and therefore left out of narratives about our culture. Ruins and rubble can certainly tell us a lot about our culture and the society that has come before, but also about the culture we live in now. Allowing a church to fall into ruin can signify the decline of Christianity in the area, or a shell of an empty cultural hotspot can signify the prioritisation of hotel building for tourism. While we already see the loss of culture in our lifetime, post-apocalyptic or dystopian video games offer a particularly detailed insight into what our world could potentially look like if the battle between culture and nature continues on the current trajectory. Spoiler, humans don't win this one.
Welcome to Nuka World, America's favorite vacation destination.
The Fallout franchise seeks to imagine a post-war world in which humans try to recover and survive in the decades and centuries after a nuclear war that decimates the planet. Fallout 4 takes a particularly novel approach, in which the nuclear blast takes place in a 1950s-esque period with mid-century design mixed with futuristic technology.
We do have coming in. That's, confirmed reports, I repeat, confirmed reports of nuclear detonations in New York and Pennsylvania.
Oh my God!
After surviving the blast and awaking from a cryogenic bunker, you enter a world that is now devoid of most life forms, and any plants or animals you do encounter are irradiated and dangerous. While the environment is hostile, parts of culture survive in the forms of billboards, posters, and signs. This shows the player what once was and its potential had it not been destroyed. In contrast, The Last of Us offers a less hostile approach to a post-apocalyptic environment, but one that seems all the more realistic in a post-COVID era. After a widespread pandemic wipes out 60% of the population, the world that is left behind is one that is taken over by nature. Collapsed buildings are overgrown with vines and mosses and trees. While you don't encounter many animals in the game, the ones you do encounter tend to offer a moment of solitude and quiet.
Hey there.
Until reality calls. We see traces of culture in the world similar to Fallout, through billboard advertisements, magazines, and posters. Throughout the game, we can piece together how people lived, and you learn that it's quite similar to how we live right this moment. But what if culture and nature could live in harmony, and does it exist? The short answer is yes, if you know where to look. Amazonian tribes, in complete contrast to colonists back in the 1700s, use a shifting cultivation farming method, where they tend a specific piece of land for a few years until the soil is no longer suitable. They then move to another uncleared patch of land, allowing the previous patch to regenerate for 10 to 15 years before using it again. Amazonian natives share a respect for the earth as an integral part of their culture, with one tribesman saying, "The earth is our historian, our educator, the provider of food, medicine, clothing, and protection. She is the mother of our races." Indigenous peoples have an enormous amount of almost irreplaceable information and skills about living in the rainforest without destroying it, and this is at risk of being lost due to non-Indigenous farmers cultivating the land incorrectly and the commercial deforestation of the Amazon. Another case study of culture living in tandem with the land is displayed by the tribe of North Sentinel Island. While we have extremely limited information on this tribe, the rare glimpses of their survival methods and craftsmanship are enough to display a natural give-and-take rhythm with the land they inhabit. Forbes journalist Kiona Smith covers this in detail, referring to census records and other historical documents to unravel the mystery of this tribe. They build narrow canoes from the wood sources on the island, and these are used to hunt crab and fish. They carry arrows, spears, and knives that contain iron that was most likely sourced from washed up material on the beach, that are then handcrafted to shape. Other handcrafted items included weaving baskets and carving wooden axes. The tribe uses the natural materials they're surrounded with in order to survive, and many researchers believe they don't want to be interrupted in doing so. In fact, they are well known for being highly defensive against visitors and tend not to welcome them. Their culture of staying private and expecting danger from explorers is well founded. In 1771, a British colonist, Maurice Portman, came to the island to rescue stranded passengers of an Indian merchant ship. Portman claimed the island as part of the British Empire, which only lasted until 1880, and ended up capturing an elderly couple and 4 children from the island. The elderly couple tragically died, and Portman sent the 4 children back to the island ridden with disease. Drawing on earlier themes, this is another form of not only being an invasive species to nature via colonialism, but also using the natives of that environment to invade their own space with foreign diseases. So, can we work with nature in order to survive, but also to have a culture that is enriching for the human spirit? Junk Space by Rem Koolhaas may help us to answer this. He encourages the reader to reflect on the homogenization and consumerism of culture, that it lacks distinction and its main drive is to generate capital. He seeks to encourage community engagement and participation in the planning and design of spaces, promoting a more sustainable, small-scale and culturally sensitive approach to development. That cultural diversity must also prioritise the earth and the natural state of the land, working in accordance to local and indigenous knowledge, to not only sustain but to regenerate the ground we walk on and the air we breathe for the future generations to come.